Hey, everybody. Up next, why I will never play a non-religious Dungeons and Dragons character again. Hey everybody, this is Paul, and I am your Technofunk DM today. I want to tell you a quick story. When I first played D&D, and those who are familiar with this channel know that I became a DM of Dungeons and Dragons way before I ever got to play it. And just the circumstances, I was trying to convince my friends to give it a try. They said, fine, but we're not doing any work. You're doing all the work. This is what happens. And so I had very few opportunities to play. But when I did play, I played a paladin. And the reason I played a paladin is because you may have noticed, but I am a fan of Final Fantasy IV. If you kind of see the things behind me, I have perlers of the entire playable characters in that, as well as a cool scroll poster that I love. I love that image of Cecil and Cain. But the character of Cecil is my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. I love his story. I love his arc. I think he is one of the truly great inspirational heroes of the Final Fantasy world. And that was kind of my introduction into paladins, and so I jumped at the chance of playing paladins. And this was 2E, when you had to be lawful good to be a paladin, and all this. But what I did was I played a paladin like I think a lot of us play paladins, in that, yes, I am a noble and good character. I am moral, and I am good, and my God likes me. What was my God's name again? Let me pull up my character sheet. It's like I had this character of this avatar of one of the gods, and I never really thought about the character of the god behind the character. So this all changed fairly recently for me. I think the seeds of it started to change a little bit when I started getting into Dragonlance. And for those who might be new to the channel, we do a lot of D&D here, in particular about Dragonlance, because I'm absolutely fanatical about Dragonlance, as well as video game music. So go ahead and roll to hit that subscribe button down below, and you know what? You can have advantage on that roll. So reading Dragonlance at least got me to think about the actual gods of the world, and not just that the clerics and paladins are kind of quasi-religious figures that are really just more moral characters than religious characters. So what changed that about me? So I stopped playing paladins a long time ago. I kind of fell into the old 2E paladin trap, where they just end up being lawful stupid and kind of annoying characters. And by the way, that's not a problem with lawful good. That's a problem with me as a role player, and as a lot of us as role players. We'll do a video about that at some point. But I got away from playing paladins a long time ago, and when I came back to Dungeons & Dragons again, I'm mostly a DM. I don't get to play that often, but I started going toward other classes. I wanted to do a paladin again, and so not terribly long ago, a friend of mine started a campaign of the Sent into Avernus, and I was like, it'd be cool to be a paladin on this, but I don't want to be the paladin like I was back then. I don't want to be kind of the lawful stupid, annoying, moralistic paladin. I'd rather do something else. And so, going into the options in fifth edition, fifth edition actually has a lot of great options to not play that particular type of paladin, which opened things up a lot. But I started looking for who I was going to worship as a character. Who is the source of my great paladin power? And it was really just kind of looking through the back of the player's handbook through the list of deities, and I wanted to be kind of nature focused. And I picked out the ones that had a domain over nature. And it's like, okay, well, let me look more into this. And this is when I found Lyra. Now, I haven't played a lot of Forgotten Realms. I don't know a lot of Forgotten Realms. The gods of the Forgotten Realms I know are because I heard them in an actual play podcast or something, or like in an old book or something like that. And so I hadn't heard of Lyra, and so I kind of looking into her. So if you're not familiar with Lyra, she is kind of this goddess over joy and mirth. She is a party god. All right. And I don't say that in a way of kind of irresponsibility of, just like, going to party college and getting wasted every night and sleeping in every day. She actually, I mean, it's a lot different than that. She actually thinks this is a very, very important part of life. The wedding feast is of great importance. The dance, the song. These are important parts of life, and these are actually the parts of life that make life worth life. And so she's passionate about that. And this is kind of like my first, like I know I'm late to this game, guys. I know, I know, but this is like my first real thought of, these different faiths probably have like different practices and stuff, and they probably don't all act the same. You kind of get the, I say you, I mean me. I got the impression like, well, all the good gods kind of do worship good. I don't know what that means, but kind of do worship good. But reading more on Lyra, she's not like that at all. Her priests are dancing priests. Now, I want to show you an image because this is great. This is an old second edition book called Faiths and Avatars. By the way, if you can find a copy of this book or get her to drive through RPG or something like that, really interesting book that just goes through the different Forgotten Realms deities. Check out this. This is a priest of Lyra. They're dancing priests. Her temples are set up to have parties at. And not frat boy parties, but actually nice parties, like for wedding feast. And when some poor couple is getting married and they can't afford to have a party, the priest of Lyra jumps in and fixes it for them and does it for them, and it's awesome. It's awesome. Okay, so I'm hooked on this goddess. I'm enamored with this concept. I was like, okay, yeah. So my character is a paladin of Lyra. What does that mean? Because being the paladin of a party goddess is probably not the same as something else. And in fact, Lyra is not fond of violence at all. And the one thing I keep seeing mentioned as like the unforgivable sin in her church is violence at a festival. If there's violence at a festival, that's the thing that she cannot abide. And so what does that look like? Because paladins are these creatures that wield violence. If they're good paladins, if they wield violence for justice, for the downtrodden, or whatever their god is asking of them. So what does that mean for Paladin of Lyra? And how do I play that? And these are things, so like, these also have ramifications, like going through like all levels of the character. And I don't want to, and I don't want to say that like my character is a perfect representation of this deity. Because that's not the way things are in real life either, right? I remember like I end up having a lot of discussions with friends over religion, and I had a Catholic friend years ago who was talking about it's like that I needed to join the Catholic Church, and that they were biblical right on all things. Except this one thing, and he brought up something he just disagreed with the Catholic Church on. So it's like, this is the way we live, right? And so I don't want my character to be just like this like perfect like embodiment of the spirit of in this case the goddess. I want there to be possible disagreements, but definite failings, shortcomings, and all this stuff. But what I'm thinking of here is, how does my faith manifest itself in the character itself? So this is where like this character really started going in a direction that I found super interesting, because it's not that he is going to just avoid violence at all costs, but he's going to avoid violence at most costs. And so he has become the character that kind of tries to talk and reason his way out of everything, all encounters. And this kind of puts him at odds sometimes with the other characters. And when they think it's like, dude, we really should have just killed those guys. Now they're going to go tell their boss where we are and that sort of thing. And it can now foster different conversations with the other characters. In addition, it can give the DM ideas onto how to play with that. So like the DM now knows that Lyra is steadfast. You do not commit violence at a festival. If I were the DM, we would have a festival, and there would be a situation, right? Now the character's faith is put to the test. In this case, the DM and I have had many, many conversations about this one topic by itself. And so when I said at the beginning that I'm not going to play a character that is non-religious again, this is what I'm talking about. It's not that it's not that I don't want I think that somebody who's playing kind of an agnostic character or something like that is not as filled out. I'm just talking about the inputs that realistic characters have. These are inputs of culture, of where you grew up, of who your parents were, but also who the people around you are. What kind of culture was that? The inputs of personal experience, but also the inputs of belief. This includes philosophy. This includes religion, and knowing what just simply what deity this character is following brings up so many more questions that are filling out this character. I'm playing a cleric in the podcast Rolling Through the Realms, who actually is a little bit different. he has a faith that informs him, but he has actually added quite a bit of ceremony and discipline to the faith that is not required of him, but because of past experiences. This is another one of those inputs. It's like there's shaping that comes from your church. There's shaping that comes from the culture. And then there's just the shaping of what you've gone through and what is working for you and what's not. And even if it's not, sometimes you're still doing it. And so I don't want people like that. Like, I mean, I know, look, I know people are going to click on, well, hopefully people are going to click on this video, but people are going to click on the video because of the title and it's like, well, I like playing agnostic characters and you're stupid. And hopefully you watch the video before you type that. It's YouTube. We know it's fine. This is not a video saying that all your characters need to be religious. Probably if you're playing a cleric or paladin, that probably should be. But it's also not a video saying, figure out what your God likes and be exactly that. It's saying realistic characters are formed from many different sources in their lives, in real life, and it should be the same with your D&D character to really flesh out. For me, this is definitely a road that I'm going to keep going down because it was so. First of all, it's so interesting. It's anytime you have those questions that you and your DM are talking about off screen, like in between sessions, that it's like, oh, what about this? How would my character react to this? How would my character react to that? Those are good things. Those are things that are filling out your character. But my experience has been so fun and interesting in this. But it has also felt to me like something that my characters have been lacking in the past, that I don't want, that I want to sit down and seriously consider every single time in the future. So a lot of people, I guess the most popular thing I do is play Crethin on Dice and Dreary. There's a funny story about this because Crethin in that game is like asks questions about religion, but is completely clueless about it. And this was not the initial intention of the character. I actually made him proficient in religion. But this is Curse of Strahd. And when you walk into Curse of Strahd and you don't know who the Morning Lord is, there's not a lot. I mean, you're going to be pretty worthless for religious discussion in the future. And that's what happened there, is that despite my proficiency, I bombed a roll on who the Morning Lord is. And so I've had to play him as clueless about the Morning Lord ever since. And so I laugh every time we do a skills challenge, because it's like I've got this skill in religion here that is very, very high that I never get to use. I think I've rolled religion twice in the game and I failed both of them. Crethin by necessity has not followed this pattern of having religion, and I would put him up as someone who turned out to be a really good character despite that. And so again, this is not this video saying that your character needs to have several religious practices that they follow all the time. Again, if you're going to play a cleric in my game, you're probably going to need to have some ideas as to, religious practices. But this is to say that in the games I've played, this has been a fantastically underutilized resource for what motivates your character, what the inputs that form your character, and how, and the philosophies that drive your character to act in certain ways in certain circumstances, as well as a good resource for the dungeon master to really pick up on situations that might not be a problem for someone else, but it's going to be of particular interest to your character. I know for a fact that there's going to be a carnival at some point. Some sort of festival. It's just going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. I really appreciate you hanging on. If you have, if you have any good stories of how your character's faith helped form the character, form a situation, form a reaction, throw it in the comments section below. I'd be really interested to hear how other people are using the deities of role playing games in actual gameplay. Please do subscribe, and we'll be back with more. We are going to be doing some more video game music as well as Dragonlance stuff coming up. Thank you for watching this video, and before you ask in the comments, yes, my character does dance.